In 1933, a quarter of the American workforce had no income. Hundreds of thousands of families relied entirely on charity just to eat. The Great Depression had pushed the country's economy to the absolute edge of failure. While citizens lined up for bread, a group of the nation's wealthiest industrialists and banking executives gathered privately in Manhattan. They were drafting a strategy to dismantle the United States government by force, overthrow President Franklin D. Roosevelt, and install a compliant dictator in his place. This is the history of the 1933 business plot, an organized attempt by American citizens to replace the republic with a corporate-backed military regime. For decades, the financial elite viewed the White House as an extension of their own boardrooms. They were accustomed to presidents who prioritized corporate stability over social programs. Then, FDR took office. Within his first few months, he issued Executive Order 6102, which banned the private hoarding of gold coin and bullion, effectively pulling the United States off the strict gold standard. Working-class voters saw these New Deal policies as a lifeline. The banking dynasties saw a betrayal. They viewed Roosevelt as a traitor to his own social class, a rogue executive dismantling the financial mechanisms that kept them in power. Since they could no longer control the executive branch through lobbying or political pressure, these industrialists concluded that the democratic process itself had become a liability. With their global financial dominance at stake, these industrial titans viewed violent force as a viable strategy to protect their personal fortunes. Executing a coup d'etat on American soil required immense logistical planning. They needed weapons, supply chains, and a reliable method to move hundreds of thousands of men into the capital. This chart shows the scale of their financial commitment. The conspirators pooled an estimated $300 million. To put that in perspective, a typical presidential campaign at the time cost a tiny fraction of this amount. Because they could not rely on the active-duty military, they channeled this capital to build an independent shadow militia from the ground up, directing funds towards black market armaments and private transit networks. Their recruitment strategy targeted World War I veterans. Many of these men were impoverished and angry at the government over unpaid wartime bonuses. The plotters planned to enlist 500,000 trained soldiers using that resentment. 500,000 armed men still require a commander. The financiers needed a leader the troops already trusted and would follow without question. They chose Major General Smedley Butler. As a two-time Medal of Honor recipient, he was one of the most decorated Marines in the country's history. The pitch to Butler was highly specific. They wanted him to mobilize the private veteran army, march them into Washington, D.C., and physically occupy the capital. Once the city was secured, they would force Roosevelt to remain as a figurehead while signing away all actual executive authority to a newly created cabinet position, which they called the Secretary of General Affairs. The corporate elites assumed Butler's loyalty could be bought. They offered him immense wealth and absolute power, operating on the belief that personal enrichment would always override personal principles. They were wrong. Instead of securing the perfect commander, their assumption handed the blueprints of the conspiracy to a man fiercely loyal to the Constitution. Butler feigned interest. He continued meeting with the plotters, asking detailed questions to map out their network and secure hard evidence of their intentions. Armed with their names and plans, he went directly to Congress. In closed-door sessions of the McCormick-Dickstein Committee, Butler detailed the entire operation. He provided a complete roster of the conspiracy, explicitly identifying the specific banking executives, wealthy heirs, and industrial magnates who had approached him with the $300 million offer. The committee conducted its own legal investigation into his claims. Their final report confirmed that a violent takeover of the federal government was indeed being planned, and that the financial backing was real. A congressional body just verified an active plot by domestic billionaires to overthrow the sitting president. The logical next step would be mass arrests for treason. Yet, not a single executive was ever charged with a crime. No one went to prison. Instead, the highest levels of power insulated themselves. The names of the wealthiest conspirators were quietly scrubbed from the final public transcripts, while the major newspapers, owned by these same industrial networks, mocked Butler's testimony as a fantasy. The business plot demonstrates that the most potent danger to the American Republic emerged from the private offices of Manhattan's financial elite. These men engineered an armed rebellion against the United States and walked away completely untouched. It forces a very uncomfortable question. If they could organize a takeover in plain sight nearly a century ago, what kind of operations are they executing today?